welcome to Kevin. Kevin, welcome. Whee! Jump in there.
Hello. Hey, Dan, thanks for the introduction. Yeah, like you said, I'm Kevin with Lamchop Media. Just a quick personal background on me. I am new to the Seattle area. Just moved in the last 6 months with my wife. And just currently just both expanding, growing my business. This is something that I have on my own as a designer, motion video animation background, taking my creative services and essentially working with tech companies, large brands, all the way to startup companies for some of these services that you can see on the screen. A lot of what I do in my previous life was working in-house at large companies. So taking that experience and bringing it into the freelance solopreneur route is where I currently stand. So a lot of the current clients that I work with are remote. It's exciting to be in a city like Seattle that could have a lot of opportunity in that same realm of tech startups, large companies, and anywhere that I could focus in and work with folks across all walks of life. It gets me really excited. So just a quick overview of the things that I do, with a video background, motion, and design. Some of the services that I currently offer kind of expand across this landscape, and it includes some of the stuff that I've worked with in the past. So overall, motion design in the capacity of product development, UI, UX prototyping, brand design. Editorial in terms of video is basically any reels, trailers, promos, brand storytelling, documentary style, and then performance growth ads is very relevant to a lot of the startup companies I work with. So I like to emphasize that a lot of the work in the most recent years has come from growth ads and performance marketing. More of the fun stuff, animation. I have short films that I like to do. I like to see where that opportunity is with brand narratives for companies that are looking to expand in that narrative storytelling element and use animation as that medium. And then on the production side, less so these days, but this is my background. I would love to get more into it, but it's more so live action, shooting behind the scenes, in studio, documentary, sort of video production on set and whatnot. Getting that in-person energy and that in-person experience of shooting and filming is always something that initially what I got into the field to do, but over the last few years, just transitioning more to remote and kind of applying the other disciplines. I love to see where there are opportunities to be more hands-on production in person as well. So with that, quick overview of this is the stuff that I do. The current where I'm at right now and the current state of where I'm looking to grow or possibly expand is mostly a potential partnership that I'm exploring. And this is very much just something that, in short, it's something that I have with a close friend of mine I went to school with. We did some, passion projects together, including some of the animated films, short films that are on my website. And this is essentially the big question that I'm looking at right now. Is the goal to focus or continue to expand and explore? And expanding and exploring, it basically includes working with a different skill set that my friend and this potential partner could bring to the table. And this is something that he would bring to the table. His name is Justin. I'll keep his information closely under wraps, just more so just the general idea I would like to share. It's very much like a partnership in terms of what skill set that he brings and his background, which is 3D, VFX, AR, XR. He has a lot of the complementary skill sets that I would have. However, it really does open up a very large range of things that you could touch upon in that field, working with larger productions, larger initiatives, and more so emerging technology. A lot of where his skill sets lie. So with that, the current pitch and his TK, his brand is TK, so I'm just keeping it real short. That's his logo. But overall, it's essentially, we did have an opportunity to pitch to a company, and it was an XR company. And this was you know, as the traditional build a plane as you're falling off the cliff goes, like it was something I had approached with him of, let's see if we could just put together a quick pitch, just unofficially, because it was an XR company. I knew that there would be an additional ask of like visual effects, 3D, some of the skill sets that he brought. And I wanted to pair that with some of the producing or some of the more video production elements that I did in my previous work. So I wanted to essentially come to this pitch and combine these two elements and create this reel. This was only used for that one client, that one prospect. But it always left that question in the back of my mind of like, you know, is this something, is this experimental? Do I, you know, am I just throwing things against the wall? Is this just to try it out? Or is there some value in actually like expanding and like really considering this like a more like a studio or a larger service, even as I'm like, you know, currently expanding on my own as like my own solopreneur, like, you know, where in that conversation do I bring in a new partner or even new expanded services? So what I'm going to share is the reel that I put together for the pitch. I'm just going to share that. I'm not going to share that whole deck that we did for this prospect, but I just wanted to show like this kind of combines both of our work together, and it just kind of creates that like that idea of like what's possible for both of our services combined. Yeah, so hopefully that woke everybody up. Making a banging sizzle reel is always something that I love doing. It's always really fun just to put together all the work. Essentially, that breakdown of the work, and I'll explain this in a second, but that breakdown of that work was anything that was like 3D heavy, that visual effects heavy, that was all his work. Any of like the more branded stuff, more of that live action brand stuff, that was more my work coming to the table. So really combining the two. And as I was putting together, like it was very much like, this is fun to put together. Obviously it's like very flashy and you know, it's meant to turn heads and whatnot. But I think overall, I think it was just like, back to the original question, it was like, you know, is there value in like expanding, or is there very much like, you know, at a different time in a different place sort of scenario to explore later on as I continue to go down like one solo path. He very much is going down his own path with his work. But this is like a, you know, just a perspective idea where both of our brands combined, we just called it LTK as like very much short. And this is what's funny is my whole like brand Lamchop, based off my last name. His is Techno Kitty, because this is the brand that he put together. So LTK for short. We're very playful. Us art students love to explore in that artistic abstract way. But to keep it condensed and short, I felt like LTK is the name that we pitched under for the specific client. So with that would be the expanded offering would look like, you know, a perspective expanded offering would look something like that, an added visual effects vertical that has 3D animation for augmented reality and mixed reality. And yeah, that's very much the presentation. This is the Q&A. I'm open to all and any feedback and suggestions.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, Kevin. I like that presentation. And what we'll do is we'll have Kevin, if you want to, unless you have something else that you want to pull up here, if you want to go ahead and stop sharing your screen, and then that'll make it easier for me to see people that are raising their hands. And remember that Dale did drop the information in the chat for Kevin, as far as to be able to contact him or bring up more information about that. So looks like Dale has a question right off the bat. Go ahead, Dale, jump in.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for presenting that, Kevin. I love this format for just kind of explaining what you're doing to this group. So because I'm frankly ignorant of the sector that you're operating in, what I was curious about is when you're talking about the focus versus exploring and expanding, are you very specifically talking about this particular partnership, the LTK, or are you also talking about other aspects of your business? Because you know, when you started, you mentioned that you're relatively new to the area and exploring some of the opportunities in Seattle. I was just curious to hear a little more about what you meant about that dichotomy.
Oh yeah, actually, that kind of helps clarify on my own narrative. Is essentially, yeah, the focusing in is like something only relevant to the work that I look at locally. Is that like where I'm going out and pitching myself, like to clients and whatnot. I like to keep it. I like that first slide where there was the 4 services that I offer. I even like to just dwindle that down normally to like the motion design aspect, because I find that that's the most relevant. So overall, that's kind of a market demand sort of fit that I'm always trying to curate for specific clients. So specifically to the Seattle area, I found that focusing in on just motion design, for example, had gotten me more traction and just more of an understanding across the industry. Whereas like overall, like that idea is that like, here's all the services I offer. I always found that generally like the more expanded services, that even showing 4 different services is always like sometimes received as like, this is too much of a stretch, like
Okay.
what's your particular focus? So I think that's like the key word, is that just like the focus on both my business locally or whatnot, even just how I operate. Just I've always had to find myself going more narrow, like more funneled in. So then introducing even a new, like, a partner or whatever it is, like that's, I think overall, that's where I'm like kind of at that crossroads where it's not like, well, I'm already kind of having, I'm just kind of have a lot of learnings of like how to pitch myself more as a focused, like, a solopreneur, or is it, here's this expanded services, and then even thinking about bringing on an additional service to that.
I hear you. Just out of curiosity, because, for example, when I have looked for artists I might collaborate with, et cetera, people who have skills that I do not in my own line of work, I've looked at things like Fiverr and stuff like that. Now, I know there's some people do not like those for various reasons, but the only reason I'm mentioning that is I have seen some people post themselves on those sites multiple times based on the particular service they're offering, right? So you might have a Lamchop motion, Lamchop production, Lamchop, right? And that way you still are accessing people who may want the other things from you, but when they first come to you, it's because they want one thing, right? So I'm just throwing that out there as a thought. I don't even know if that's the way you would approach your market for this area.
Well, funny you mentioned is that similarly, so traditionally I would not have, but I noticed these channels such as Fiverr and whatnot. That's more of graphic design, but like something other in another similar platform is Marketer Hire, where similar thing where you post as yourself, and what you do. And to your point, Dale, I probably would like, I haven't explored those routes as like, the channel marketing or finding a new business, but I would definitely think about approaching it that way with like, yeah, exactly that. Because normally that exactly to your point, people are always looking for, oh, I just need this one thing, or I just need this one thing. And they kind of ignore the rest, or it's not relevant to them right now. So I always have to make sure my narrative like makes sense, that like I do have that specialty, but then at the same time, I don't want to discredit, all the other work that they may need down the line.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that I'll just chime in really quick that on that same subject before we move on to the next question. That in a previous company, we had a lot of different like system offerings, product offerings, essentially different types of systems that we would design and install for the client, technical systems.
Yeah.
But one thing that my business partner and I would do is whenever we looked at adding a new product or a new service, we would break out our customer personas, or actually go to some of our key clients and basically say, hey, if we provided this service, would you see that as a value add? Does that matter to you? And the other metric was we would look at our competition. So if, for example, if we were providing these 3 systems and not the 4th one, was there a provider who is providing that 4th system or service to our clients who could then potentially leverage away those other services from us and develop that relationship? Like, are we basically protecting the relationship by providing that and being a one-stop shop?
Yeah.
Then it might make sense for us, but otherwise, maybe not. So anyway, that was kind of the approach that we took. So Syed, you have a question?
Yes. I wanted to actually make a comment, if I may. And as far as offerings, the offerings that I saw, Lamb, instead of really seeing them as separate categories, I sort of saw them all under the umbrella of video, like motion, production, et cetera. And I think between you and TK, just in the video that you shown, that those were all 4 categories were represented, and then to give what Dan was speaking of, is to ask people that you work with or that you confide in or that you take business advice from, or even Dan himself, whether these are value added or if they're meaningful, because they may just be an extraneous expense, like Pareto, the 80/20, where some of the things that I've done are totally different departments, separate from each other, but I offer them. And where I think what you're offering is kind of under the same umbrella. And I think between you and yourself and TK, and even that video just that I saw right there, you've demonstrated that you can do all of those things. But to give what Dan was saying is maybe ask those people who are consuming your services, is this valuable? Is this valuable? Because if you're having something that's not valuable, then that's just going to eat up your resources or expend your mental energy in things that aren't going to actually serve you. That's just my thoughts. But overall, I was very impressed with the presentation. It's beautiful. The work you're doing is very powerful, impactful, and very relevant. I think those, that kind of tech focus and loud and just in your face branding is really going to wake people up. And I think it was great.
Thank you. Yeah, to your points, I think like a lot of the resources that, what's interesting is that when I share that video, that's a video that I shared for this prospective client. It was very much made for that prospective client. However, I wouldn't share that with another client who's just looking for the app UI UX traditional route. And that's where I think putting it under video, this is something both in my career and even up till right now with the service industry that I'm tapping into. It's just very much it's almost, you have to be very specific to the folks that you're in my experience, being very specific to the offering itself, and it's very much that you have to almost guide them through that aspect. Because I could show this video to a nice flashy video to someone else and it could not resonate for completely different reasons, right? It could just be oh yeah, that's nice, but we don't need any of that, because people often folks want to see the one-to-one of what they need. So it's interesting for the resources point that you bring up, because I think I could see it exactly that. I could see it just eating up a lot of resources, being very particular, curated for each client and or prospect, and that may not be the best use of time and whatnot, or it could be the 80/20, is it worth the that sort of work put into it?
Yeah, nice. I will say that also you were talking about going into, essentially going into business with this collaboration with another individual. And I have talked to many small business owners that have a business partner or go into a partnership. And, we've been focusing on the offering side of things, but on part of this move, if you decide to make it, it's going to include a partnership with somebody else. And I don't know, I mean, there's a lot of popular articles and research out there on teams and what drives team performance. And, anytime you have collaboration between multiple individuals. And one of the things that surfaces often is shared expectations, making sure that both individuals or in a team environment, they all have the same expectation as far as what's going to happen and what the deliverable is, essentially making sure everybody's on the same page, investing the time in that. And I think that in my experience, I've witnessed that essentially that one thing undermine many, the most relationships out there, as far as the ones that don't work out or that there's any sort of problems that arise with a partnership. A lot of it does come down to they had different expectations going into it. And it's really easy to get caught up, especially as an entrepreneur, and like the idea and what we're going to do and the change that we're going to make, and like all the output side of things, and skip over or not take the time to really nail down those shared expectations as far as what you're both working towards and what you expect out of each other. So yeah. All right, so then Dale, you had a follow-up on that.
Yeah, just thinking about the same thing. Because I think I heard you right when you said this is a friend of yours who owns the TK part.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I think would be interesting if you two choose to pursue working together is the legal structure under which you would work together. Like, would you, for example, license TK's work to make it combined? Would you have an official partnership or actually change into the nature of an LLC or something, or would it be some other arrangement? I think that would probably help you to think about that, just because I'm sure you've heard, and many of us have heard of, cases where friends went into business together and then didn't end up being friends because of that kind of thing. So if you were going to explore that, one thing I can mention is, chatting with or looking at that Seattle Public Library business page that I think I mentioned to you in one of our chats, just because it's an easy way to have an initial discussion with, like, even a lawyer in some cases, to talk about some of those things. You could even invite your friend, right, where you two could have the initial chat with someone to bounce the idea of, hey, if this is how we intend to work together, do we need to hire a lawyer? Do we, is there a boilerplate type of agreement we can use? Things like that. Just something for your consideration.
Yeah. No, that's very important consideration. Seeing as how, exactly the organic story of the nature of this was, there's a prospective client who could use your skill set. Why don't we collab on this? And overall, we've worked together in the past, and it's like, wouldn't this be cool?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course.
And then that's where, things like, and then you start talking about like business or like the actual ramifications of like what that actually means, which is yet to be explored. And that's where I'm sitting right now.
Cool. Yeah, it's a good place to be. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's fun. So what, as far as if you categorize an ideal client, is there like a type of company or a size or like industry vertical or something that tends to like come to you?
Yeah, ideally it is like a company like this, like an XR type company, or emerging tech sort of realm, you kind of utilizing any AR company that's in their early prototyping phases, as a lot of these companies are still developing, being able to kind of be a partner creatively with those engineers or those products that are currently being developed. That's the ideal scenario. that's sort of where this pitch kind of landed, was that like, oh, there's a company that actually would like to see what visually, like, explore what is possible for a product that they're developing. And then coming back down to, like, day-to-day reality, it is more so like the everyday, like, sort of marketing or operational creative tasks is sort of like what that's where I'm operating right now personally, right? So I think there's definitely the ideal, or like the goal, and then what currently is driving business.
Yeah, so somebody that's like a director of marketing, or they're in charge of product marketing for their organization or services, that type of thing. They can come to you and say, hey, this is what we're doing, and I want you to make it look cool. And
exactly, yeah, that's exactly where I sit right now. And often with the creative team, if the company's large enough, then they'll have an existing very foundational creative team that they just need additional resources for, and this is where I would step in. And then, yeah, peering more into where the goals are would be like, yeah, any emerging tech that definitely doesn't have a marketing team yet. They're early stages and they're still just kind of building product, and being at that forefront, or being at that forefront with a team or a company like that is pretty exciting, I think.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.